Commission meeting to order for Thursday, February 4th of 2021. May I have a roll call, please?
Leon Davis.
Yes.
Craig Bowman.
Here.
David Randolph.
Here.
John Brown.
Here.
Scott West.
Here.
Chairman Carol Minden.
Here. And your request to approve the minutes from January 7th.
Hello. Second.
Leon Davis.
Yes.
Craig Bowman.
Yes.
David Randolph.
Yes.
John Brown.
Yes.
Scott West.
Yes.
Chair Minden.
Yes. First item on the agenda is ARC 20-496, request by Gary Haynes for approval of a monument sign. This is at the general location of 415 East A Street. Marcy?
Thank you, Chair Minden. This is a sign that has gone to the ARC. I've been in dialogue with Mr. Haynes on this project for many, many weeks. We have come to a better solution than where we started. So I think that A+ Roofing is excited about getting some identification other than a little banner that they have hanging on their fence right now. The location is 415 East A Street. The sign, and when I say that it's 17.55, that's literally the area where they're going to put their name, etc. It actually stands 7 feet tall and is, or 4 feet, sorry, 5 feet 4 inches tall, and it's 7 feet wide. So just keep that in mind and make sure that you're very, very, very comfortable with that as we move through this conversation. The ARC did vote 6-1, or there were 6 people who voted in favor, and there was 1 I did not get a response from. Staff comments: the sign needs to match existing signs in the neighborhood. The style, it should fit in the neighborhood. The size, the sign should not be too tall for the area or too wide. And just a reminder that this started out as a residential lot, so it's very small. And I believe that the sign should reflect the home/residential office architecture. And that concept they did, I do believe, a good job. The location, the sign has to be set back at least 30 from the residential lot to the east. It says due to site constraints, including lot width and drive aisle, the actual length of the setback has not been determined. I do have a site plan if you want to see it. If you're familiar with the lot, there is a drive aisle, and I believe it was required during the original hearing to have all the parking in the back. In addition to that drive aisle, they came back later and added another concrete path. It's not big enough to actually park a full-size vehicle, but it is a kind of like an attached sidewalk. And it appears that they're going to put the sign adjacent to that sidewalk. So the sign would be, if you were pulling in, going north into the drive aisle for A+ Roofing, the sign would be immediately to your right. And then they will need a waiver because you're not supposed to be within 30 feet of a residential lot. I mean, have that not quite right. So there are 2 approval options. Approve as presented, allowing for cabinet sign with no interior lighting, and waiver of the 50 feet, it was 50, sorry, from the residential lot. And the whole lot itself is only 50 feet, so there's no way they can ever have a sign that would comply with that. And, or you can reject the design with recommendations and conditions, or you can actually, there should have been a third one where you can approve it with conditions. So I believe that the content and overall style of the sign is acceptable. I believe that the sign should match existing signs found within the downtown. I did go around, take some photographs of some other signs that I felt were possibly a little more in line with the downtown. What's interesting is it's in the appearance review special theme district, but there are no guidelines or restrictions for actual size of signs. So I'm assuming that it has always been dealt with on a case-by-case basis and quite subjective, honestly. A+ Roofing, approving this request would allow A+ Roofing to have a monument sign with relief from the setback requirement of the single-family lot to the east. If you look on page 8 of your staff report, it shows the general location of that area. And then it is located next to the, I believe it's the Blue Cottage. And this photo is not accurate, of course. This is not what their house or what their office looks like. If you look on page 9, it shows the special theme district, and they're right there on the perimeter of it. I included the Jenks school sign, and I sent it to Mr. Haynes early on and said, hey, can we get a little closer to something like this? And also sent these other 2 signs, which you will also see on page 10. One is an apartment sign, very small, and the other one is a church sign for the United Methodist Church. Once they made their application for the last one, they did submit, and you can see this on page 15, the monument sign. Sorry. The one that they submitted and I sent out early on in my original draft was the wooden looking one on page 12. But after the agenda had been posted, they submitted one more sign, and they would like approval of the one with the rock. So the dimensions did not change. The actual exterior wood look and the perimeter block did not change. The only thing that changed was the background, and it went from a wood surface looking material to a rock or stone material. And that is all I have for this.
No?
So,
Yeah. Any questions, comments from the commissioners?
One question, the placement. Knowing that the egress entrance to the property is on the south side where that's going to be placed, cars coming out and then turning west, will they be able to see visibly, or will that sign block visibility for oncoming traffic?
It would block, but I don't think that it looks to me that it's always used as a one-way. I'm not saying that no one ever does come back out. It looks to me like everybody enters from the street, goes through the side of the house and out the alley.
So,
yeah.
So maybe we should stipulate that traffic needs to flow in that direction versus having them come back out, because I'd be concerned that there might be some visibility issues with traffic.
The drive aisle is not wide enough for two-way traffic.
Okay. So
unless you were on bicycle.
So then can we stipulate then that if they come in, that they will go out through the north side, exiting the north?
But there's no arrow on that driveway that designates that it's one way.
Yeah, that
So
was
maybe, yeah, you can make those, absolutely.
That was just a concern. I know that as we codify the language, development language that we're going to use with the new plan, on the staff comments we had on the 3 bullet points, style needs to match, it should fit, and it can't be too tall or too big. So 4 very subjective terms, and if we can get away from the subjectivity, it would help us in the future. I know that signage has been one that we've always danced around about on that.
As far as size, unless you have more.
No.
I personally, by the way, I think both models are attractive looking signs, just my own opinion. But it also looks a little bigger than some of the other examples you found. Maybe not the Jenks school sign. Do you have a better sense of how the size just compares with existing signs?
I can say that the 2 photos, not including the Jenks sign, the Jenks sign is not as wide as this one. I didn't go out and measure it. It's probably between 4 and 5 feet wide. The height, it is pretty tall. I'm not sure about the height. But that's also adjacent to a huge parking lot. And, it's just a whole different scenario. It's a lot of property. It's a huge identification sign, which is very much needed for people who are trying to find a specific part of the school, or just identify the school in general. The other 2 signs, I know the one for the apartment is probably not over 3 feet tall, and it's probably, I'm really bad at spatial analysis, maybe 4 feet at max. And then the other one for the church is probably, the apartment one was smaller, the church one might be 4 feet by 5 feet.
Okay. And then just kind of my other comment is, obviously this area is transitioning from housing to commercial properties. So I don't have an issue with assuming it meets other guidelines, kind of waiving that requirement, because it's a fairly small lot, and I think we want businesses here, but I do have the same concerns about just traffic visibility too.
Anyone else?
I like it. Matter of fact, I drove by there yesterday and almost pulled in, what was yesterday? What's today? Monday?
Yes, there's.
Thursday, yeah. Sometime this week, I drove by there in the evening and I almost pulled in because I wanted to stop and tell the owners or whoever was present how great I thought that their result turned out to be with their renovation of that house. I think it looks terrific. And I like like you said, both signs are present. I don't think I have a big issue with visibility where the sign's located because of that being a one-way. You're coming out, you're making a right-hand turn, you pull up and stop, you got a clear view. Your sign's set back off of that. So visibility is not an issue for me. I like the sign. I like what they've done previously, and I would support this.
Scott, you would support the height of it being 64 inches?
Yes. Yep. I would support
That's an
that.
awful big sign on such a big wall.
I would support it as submitted.
I agree with what you're saying as far as what they've done with the building. I think the building came out beautiful and it looks really good. On the other hand, I totally disagree with the sign. I think that it's way too big in height and in width for the size lot it is and for the size building that's there. When I take a look at the picture of the apartment and see what the apartment looks like, that seems to be something small and unique. And we're kind of in an area that's residential, and I think a sign that big for a small building is just too much in your face when you're driving down the street. And my other concern would be the safety of driving, like you said, because even though you're going to if you do delegate that there's going to be a one-way street, there's still going to be people that are going to come out that way, and that's one of the things I thought immediately, because even though all the traffic's going one way, it's too easy to pull out and not see that there's a car behind there. So those are my thoughts on it. Anybody else have anything else?
Do you have a height in mind that you think would be more appropriate?
Well, if the apartment is around 3 by 4, I thought that was a pretty good size, because I was looking at that picture, I thought, now that's something that's a little smaller and lower to the ground. I don't think it needs to be, because it's in it's in a neighborhood area, I don't think you need that base they've got 9 inches on just the base. And although the sign is very stylish, I just think that if it got reduced, because I don't know, if the lettering is almost 3 feet tall, that's pretty tall for a small business in a small street. So if it could just be compacted down somewhat and to be made more with a 3 by 4, I think that would be much more appropriate. But just my opinion.
Well, as far as the size, I mean, I could maybe see if this were the 1, but this is sort of setting the new standard going forward. So I guess in my mind, it's like, what if all the businesses had a 6-foot sign or whatever? It does seem a little tall, just sort of thinking about it. But.
That's kind of what I thought. Because businesses down there are small.
Marcia, do you know what the height was on the Jenks Education Center?
I apologize, I do not know.
How about the size of the Blue Cottage?
That one is actually.
Because that's right next
You
door.
can see it. A lot of those are wooden, and so they feel different anyway because they're
It's kind of there.
generally smaller.
It's in the picture.
John, I don't think I'd have a problem too with the size of the sign for like the Jenks Public Schools, because it's a gigantic building on a huge lot. But you're taking a little lot, and putting a sign that's even bigger than the Jenks Public Schools on there. So it's a gigantic sign on a very small lot. And I think that this roofing company could get just as much visibility if it was the 46 inches or whatever, and it's down to 4 foot at the most. But you're talking about, that'd be, if you did have the 39 and 9, that's 48 inches instead of 64. Obviously it's not that big a difference, but I think it visibly can be a big difference, because when you're driving down, you're gonna be like, damn. But that's obviously good advertisement for them, but it does seem awful big.
I think the Blue Cottage is at least 6 feet tall. based on looking at that photo, and you see their screening fence between the Blue Cottage and this one. But the Blue Cottage also has probably at least 3 lots instead of 1 50-foot lot.
It's also pushed back farther from the street, whereas this building is already very close to the street. Any other comments? Anyone from the audience wishing to speak on behalf of this agenda item? If so, you have to raise your hand or come forward and give us your name and address. Okay. Your recommendation or?
One last question, Madam Chair. So we're looking at 35 square feet. Didn't we have, I was thinking there was a square footage requirement that I'd seen in the code before on signs as far as how much square footage could be there. So
It's based on your linear street. And then if it was a wall sign, it would be based on the length of the wall. So I just looked on the assessor data, and the Blue Cottage has 5 lots. So 5 at 25 they have 5 lots total. And then this one that you're looking at is 2 lots. 2 25-foot lots.
So is that conforming then to that square footage limitation?
It does. Well, I calculated on the actual area of the sign, not the peak of the roof or the base.
So it conforms with the 50 feet?
There is a clause that says if the other elements are, I don't know how it's exactly worded, are part of the sign, et cetera, you can include it in the calculation, but I felt like the rock base was not really relevant to the calculation of the messaging. And I didn't feel like the roof, even though it is a roofing company, I still didn't include it in the calculation. So that allowed, I literally just measured the sign itself. So for their lot, they would be allowed 32 square feet. If you included the base and the width, they're at 35 square feet. So they're still even close if I included all of that. But, I don't know, it's a big sign to me. So it's up to you all.
I think so too.
Based on the area that you did measure, they fall within the guidelines.
They do.
I like the sign.
Yeah, that's a great looking sign.
It's short.
It's just too big.
It's big, but I like the sign.
It's 6 feet tall. I'm 6 feet tall. That's kind of big
It's
to me.
it's 7 feet tall.
It's 7 feet wide.
7 feet
No,
wide.
It's 5'4", but it's just, for the front yard, 7 feet is a lot of area for a little front yard for what they have. To me, they could lose in my opinion, they could lose the base of the 9 inches and bring it down a little bit lower to the ground. And they certainly could push it in a little bit, just.
I think the base makes it look a lot better. And it's gonna last longer. I don't like the comparison with the, comparing the apartments to this tiny house. The apartments are not really trying to advertise to people driving by. It's obvious that those are apartments. If somebody's looking for a place to live, they realize those are apartments when they drive by. This just looks like a really cool house now, and I think it needs the advertisement to tell people what it is and draw them in. It doesn't seem that big to me, but I might be wrong. If it gets put up there, I might drive by and go, oh my gosh.
So these tables are like 30 inches, right? Push 2 of these tables here, that's 60 inches, that's 5 inches. So like from Leon's table to the next table, it's gonna be at least that wide for a little itty bitty front yard lot.
That's not 7 feet.
30, 60 inches is 5 feet, and then you have another 2 feet in between.
So if you want to look over the ceiling tiles, each ceiling tile,
Thank you.
each ceiling tile is 2 foot wide and 4 foot long, so it would basically be, you know,
Three and a half ceiling tiles wide.
yeah.
That's not very big.
Craig to David, that wide. To the end of the sign.
So that'd be 7 feet.
And
that would
it
be
fits our code.
Almost, so it'd almost be, it'd be basically almost 3 by 3 up there.
That's not very big.
I guess just thinking about it more, it just seems a little big to me, and if others were to follow suit, I just feel like if it could be maybe 4 foot tall, that's still a pretty decent sign. Great, you can't miss it if you're going down A. So I think it still serves its purpose and just wouldn't make this.
I think even a 4 by 6 would be better than a 5 by 7.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking vertical height, sort of first and then, yeah, just something like that scaled down a little. I realize there's difference of opinion. And this is very subjective, but I think that's my view on this.
You all are the ones that get to make the motion.
Yes, too.
Yeah.
Can use it.
All right, then I will make a motion that we approve ARC 20-496 with the restriction, with the recommendation that the sign does not exceed 4 foot by 6 inches.
Over 6 foot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 4 foot by 6. Okay, well, that was only this big. I'm sorry, 4 foot by 6 foot, yes.
Is that with or without a base?
Total.
So whether they have a base on it or not.
I could do it with the base.
Can I ask one more question about this?
Sure.
Just a clarification. So the sign still meets our requirements as
Yes.
is. So they're complying in terms of that side, to that piece of it.
Yes, they're complying with the sign code.
But we do have to waive the setback requirement because it is a lot smaller and it's set in a resident, next to
Right.
a residential area. So there's a part of the overall code that we have to waive, or give them a waiver.
So Leon, that's what I'm thinking is if you had the setback, the sign wouldn't matter because it's way back. But when it's right up on the edge and it's gigantic, it takes up a lot of room.
So that's the basis for the adjustment of the height because of the
The
setback.
height and the width, because it's a beautiful sign, obviously.
Yeah.
How far is it off the curb, off the road? I didn't see that.
Carrie, in some of the supporting documents, there is one called site. I think the first word on it is site. Can you pull that one up, please? And zoom in to where you can see the red lines.
Is it inside the sidewalk?
Yeah, so this is still an old aerial photo. So there is a concrete path right here. Can you zoom in on this one, Carrie? There you go. So this comes over at least 3 feet, and I honestly think it's 4 feet. So I think he plans to, but this is from the sign gentleman. I believe he plans to butt the sign up adjacent to that second concrete slab, which I call the sidewalk slab. I don't know
So
what it
then
is.
all the way to the sidewalk to the south or further?
No, it looks, he didn't give me the dimensions, but it looks like there's probably, if the sidewalk is 4 feet, there's about 3 feet between the sidewalk and the sign.
So there is some space.
So the sidewalk, do you think the sidewalk's 3 feet?
It's probably 4 feet here. It's a new sidewalk bigger.
And then it's off,
Are you talking about this one, the new pad?
no, the
This
east-west sidewalk.
Yeah. It's probably 4 feet. So that sign is literally gonna, if it's approved as is, I think it will go probably not here, but from that red line all the way over to here. Like literally on, I don't know what that dimension is right there, but it's not very big.
So it's probably 7 or 8 feet off of the road, at least.
He has to be, he has to meet this setback. So from the center line of the road, he has to meet that setback, and he has drawn that one.
Okay.
So, but I think it'll probably go almost to their sidewalk that goes into the actual house.
So
Not a house anymore.
there's still some peaking distance between.
Yeah, on the side of the house. Gee.
Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you, that helps me out.
Thank you, Carrie.
Speaking of that, do we want to have any sort of stipulation about visibility for traffic purposes in this?
Well, now that I've seen where it is from the sidewalk, and the side, there's sidewalk, and then there's space, and then there's road, I'm okay with that. I just would like to see a smaller sign.
I'll go ahead and second.
Could you repeat the motion?
I make a motion that we approve whatever this, ARC 24-496 with a stipulation that the sign be no larger than 4 foot by 6 foot.
Okay. And did you want to say anything about an arrow on the drive aisle?
And with the condition that there is a one-way arrow added to the driveway going into the business.
Yeah, I'll second.
And offering the waiver, the 50-foot setback
Oh, yeah.
waiver.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would include that, yes. The waiver of the setback
Okay, yeah.
of the sign. Okay, and who made the second?
I'll second.
Leon Davis?
So if I say no, then I'm stopping the sign.
Depends how many people vote no. If the majority votes no, then we would have to have a new motion and vote on the new motion. If the majority does not vote no, then it gets approved as a 4 by 6.
Point of order, I guess you could try to amend the motion if you think it should be as presented. You could try to get those votes. It's up to you.
I like the motion, I just want to remove the restriction on the height of the sign. I just want me to sign as is, put the arrow for the traffic. But I'm fine with the sign the way it is.
Okay, Robert's rules here. Can I offer an amendment then that we make it conforming to the code, which would make it 32 feet versus 35 square feet? So they have to bring it down a little bit. We'll make it fully conform.
The entire sign from top to bottom.
Yeah, because I don't think we really stipulate in the code that it's just where the lettering is at. It's the height where we measure. And I can understand why they want to do the pitch on it, because that gives them a little bit of a visual thing for their company. But I'd say let's keep it to the 32 feet, which is, I mean, that's the language of the code. When you.
So can I ask a question? Can we
Yes.
not just go with Carol's motion and vote, and if it passes or not passes?
That's true.
There is a motion and we have started the roll call, so I think in this instance, we should continue the
I
vote.
agree.
And then if the motion fails, then we can have a second motion. Leon Davis?
No.
Craig Bowman?
Yes.
David Randolph?
Yes.
John Brown?
No,
Scott West?
No,
Carol Menden?
Yes. So we're tied.
it fails.
Majority, there was no majority, so.
That's right. So I think the
Motion fails.
Yeah.
So is there, okay. Do your job.
Is there a second, is there another motion?
I would like to amend the initial motion or make a new motion that we approve it with a stipulation, waiving the 50-foot setback, but with the stipulation that it fully conforms to the sign code, which will take it down to 32 square feet. Stem to stern.
I'll second that.
Brandon didn't make my cheat sheet big enough. Okay, Leon Davis?
Yes.
Craig Bowman?
Yes.
David Randolph?
Yes.
John Brown?
Yes.
Scott West?
You know, I'm doing some math. I think we're making it smaller even than you guys have proposed, but stem to stern, top to bottom, left to right,
Yeah.
is your motion, including the base and everything.
5 times 6, so it'd be a 5 by 6 would be
I vote
30.
yes.
Minden?
No.
Motion carries.
Still carries. I think it's somebody. Just kidding.
Okay.
All right, next item on the agenda is JZ 21
It's about 6 inches.
PUD-112, request by Kevin Jordan for an exception to required exterior materials for Lot 3 in the general location of north of 121st between Elwood and Elm.
Thank you, Chairman Minden. This is a project that is already underway. They are currently building a 40,000 square foot warehouse. The building permit is approved. They have not completed, obviously, the exterior, and Mr.
Jordan?
Thank you. I had every name possible but Jordan is present here this evening. If you do have questions, the initial part of the commentary is basically kind of a reiteration of when it was approved. So it was originally in the old comprehensive plan, part of the special district, and that was because it had been used for oil, gas. It was an oil gas property. It had storage there. The properties to the north are separated by a large reserve area and drainage channel. And from what I understand from the meeting that took place, it wasn't so much the materials, although that may have come up, but the biggest thing was most people just liked their field and had probably been promised that it was never going to be anything because of all the previous uses. It could never be developed. So it can be developed. It is being developed. And before you tonight on page 18 is a summary of the existing PUD as it was approved. The old comprehensive plan, as I indicated, was industrial special district number 3. To the south of this area, there is a large 200+ acre tract that is still IM and still for sale. If you look on page 19, it shows the general area for the zoning. To the north, you have South Creek, which is a residential subdivision. Also to the east, you have South Creek. The south of 121st is undeveloped. Excuse me, and to the west, we have the Ewing Perryman Fire Station. And the picture you see for the comprehensive plan is the comprehensive plan as it looked at the time of approval. It is not what we show today. I should have included that one. I wanted to include the South Creek Platte. So that we're talking about something right in here. And this is just what was platted. It shows that big reserve area. And then this, there's also a big reserve area in this one. So I considered this a minor amendment. We did not notify the public on this. I did not get any questions specifically, even though I have other minor amendments on the agenda. I did get phone calls on those, but this one did not get any commentary from the public. If you go to the evaluation, Lot 3, Block 1 is under construction. The building is set back more than 300 feet, so it's more than 100 yards, and that is per the engineering site plan calculations. That in itself allows them to not have to do the 4-foot wainscot around because they are 300 feet off the street. The applicant is asking for relief of the masonry requirement for Lot 3, Block 1 on all south-facing walls, which is essentially the office area. And I believe Mr. Jordan will, he can elaborate, but also that the larger warehousing area that faces the south. They're asking to use a we want to build something that's more sustainable and more modern looking, and it would be very similar to what you've already seen at Melody Lane, how they have retrofit that particular area, and that looks very nice. I'll let him tell you the details of, and I did give you some links, I don't know if you were able to look at it, of the different wall systems that they are proposing. I included the original PUD, that starts on page 23. And then I also, on page 24, indicated the conceptual site plan and conditions of approval. So if you go to page 29, the beautiful thing about PUDs is that what they present the night of and what is approved the night of is rarely the same thing. And so there's always this big gap and question about what was approved. So I literally copied and pasted from the meeting minutes, and it is officially part of the document from henceforward. And it's the conditions of approval. So we're looking at number 2, masonry covering 100% up to 20 feet high on the south facing walls of all buildings. And you keep going and look on page 30, it shows the site plan, and we're looking at this lot right here. So you see the buffer of trees required over here for the PUD for South Creek on this side, big reserve area that will protect these 2 buildings and everyone to the north. And then there is the large area, reserve area north of here. Exhibit D shows the shared parking areas from the original PUD, and we have some more exhibits. There are some samples, and this is what was presented. So what you see on page 34, 35 are samples that were submitted at the time the PUD was submitted, and he's asking to deviate from that look, which I think may be a good idea. Subjective, of course. Page 36 is just more PUD information. Wanted to make sure that you had that. On page 38 is where we're talking about the amendment actually taking place. It says lots 2 through 6, office exterior walls, east, west, and south facing. So here's the difference between what was written in the PUD versus what was approved. But regardless, it was supposed to be 100% masonry on all south facing walls. That was what was actually approved. So in the future, I'll actually put one more note in here in my final as approved that says that this was changed during the approval process. So it's easier to track. If you look at page 40 in your staff report, it shows the walls that I believe that he is talking about using the different materials. And then again on page 41, I highlighted them in red for you. And I apologize, on your package, you only got half a photo of everything. So I did not realize that, and that's why I did print the larger pictures. And then the last thing that you have in your packet is the Platte. So, oh, that's not true. It has the meeting minutes and then a little bit, the actual site plan that has been submitted with the building permit. Mr. Kevin Jordan is present if you have any questions. If you do ask him to speak, I'll remind the applicants that you have 10 minutes to make your presentation, and it's up to the commission if they have any questions for you.
So before we ask Mr. Jordan to come up, does anyone have any questions or comments?
I like the proposed change. It kind of looks like the stuff off 151st and Elwood. Went out there. Is that what this is? The proposed?
Would you like to hear from the applicant?
Pretty similar to what's that, 151st and Elwood?
Trying to picture that. It's very similar to,
Sorry, excuse me, first of all, would you give us your name and
I'm
address?
sorry, Kevin Jordan,
And your address?
4512 East 51st Street, Tulsa.
Go ahead.
The building that we more or less patterned it after is Nelson Nissan Mazda on 95th and Memorial. Is that about a right address, Caroline? If you have. If I might, we've been doing this a long time and have dealt with masonry requirements for many years, dating back to, I believe, when there weren't many other options available for enduring surfaces. And if it was barn-type metal. This metal is not less expensive necessarily than masonry, certainly not in the last 90 days when metal's gone up 30%, but we just feel it's a much better look with the mansard where you see from the front, from the south, from 100 yards away, it will look like a flat top building as opposed to a pitched roof, which we think is a much better look. It gives it more of a massive look, the black and white look that we're going with the gray on the back is a very modern look, and we just think it's a real upscale as opposed to the kind of masonry that we could use. So we respectfully request to get this approval. We've got the building and fabrication are holding off on the office part, hoping to be able to change from what we consider the traditional look with a pitch roof to something that's much better looking. I might point out that we just completed and got a certificate of occupancy on a building on the other side of the fire station, which is mini storage, and we did comply with the south-facing element requirement. But there's one that's metal, that's slanting, kind of, I guess you would say, northwest and southeast towards the fire station, and it's about half the distance, probably 50 yards, but it's still very attractive. But this one will be much nicer metal. It's a I don't know, remember the name of it, but it's from a company in Claremore. It's flat panel as opposed to any kind of corrugated, and it looks nothing like a barn roof. It has seams in it, but it's, you know, from 20 yards away, it looks like just clean black and white metal. With that, I don't know if the pictures you've got show the storefront glass and the awnings over the windows, but all of that we think is a very modern look and frankly much nicer look that we can accommodate with this than usually we'd see on a warehouse building. So that's what we're after, because we're not sure exactly what the ultimate use will be for all of this. We're looking to bring some higher end tenants as a model because we've got 4 or 5 other lots that we may want to submit this on something.
Any questions for Mr. Jordan?
So clarification is, with I know that these are illustrative
Right.
photographs that were provided, but you're going to be moving away from a flat roof to.
It will not be a flat roof, but it will, with the mansard,
It'll be a
you
facade.
can kind of appear,
Yeah,
but it'll
I
be
got it.
pitched behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah. This particular fabricator makes a gutter that you can put behind it that catches the water outside the line of the wall. So I don't know what the fabrication requirement is or the appearance, but they do this quite often, so it looks flat, but it's not. Yeah.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on behalf of this agenda item?
This is the picture of Nelson Nixon.
That, close the floor. Do I hear a motion or any other questions or comments first?
One quick comment, just, I know we've dealt with this, danced around it a little bit, because we've had other developments that we've approved over the past several years that dealt with masonry requirements, some of which we've gotten into contests over. And I know that there was at least some discussion maybe a year or so ago about whether or not we can actually by code require, make external requirements on the type of material. I know there was some discussion that came up about that. I don't know if you all remember that.
We talked about party board.
Yes, yeah. And the only reason I reference that is where we have not waived it in the past, we just want to make sure that we've got some consistent standard that we're following in the future.
Well, you have the authority to approve it or not approve it because you already had a requirement for for an exterior standard. I'll say material standard because it was already approved in the PUD.
But it would be new ones moving forward that we have challenges with. Is that correct?
It will depend how the new code is written.
Got it. Yeah, okay.
and how it complies with the new law, but the new law was primarily, I believe, for a residential
Strictly residential.
date statute.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just say, I think the purpose of the masonry requirement is that it looks better, but, you know, I mean, the Nelson Mosto look, for example, I think looks very sharp, so
Yes.
I don't think masonry is our only option. You know, I kind of think if we were to approve this, we might want something to say, like we talked about the applicant earlier, you know, not corrugated metal, you know, or something kind of, I'll call it cheap looking. I guess I'm a little bit more inclined for something like this, you know, again, when it's not residential. I think Melody Lane, as an example, works well there. You know, but if we were to move forward with this, you know, that doesn't mean I'm ready to undo it all on residential houses too. So just to be clear, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll make a motion that we approve JZ 21 PD 112 with a minor amendment number 1 as proposed.
I'll second.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Harold Minden.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is JZ 21 PUD 26, request by Spencer Pittman for a minor amendment to PUD 26 for a reduction of the 20-foot build line as pertains to the Platte at the general location of 219 East 111th Place.
Thank you, Chair. This is, starting on page 50 of your staff report, this is a request for a minor amendment to a build line as pertains to the Platte. And Mr. Pittman cannot be here today. He just had baby number 2. So he called me and said he wouldn't be able to make it. This is the garage corner. It's the southwest corner of his home. He's in a cul-de-sac, and it's a very unique, well, it's not unique to cul-de-sacs, but it's not a straight line, and therefore there was an encroachment. It's barely 6 inches. So he wanted to go ahead and get it taken care of. As you know, a lot of times title companies will not loan money if there's an encroachment of any kind. It was not the case, being only 6 inches maybe. I don't know why, but this title company did not consider it an issue, but he still wanted to go ahead and get it cleared up immediately. So they purchased the home, they've got the baby, and he would like to get a build line encroachment relief.
Any questions or comments?
This is our second issue we've had like this because of a cul-de-sac. Maybe we need to look at how we're measuring on a non-straight or a radial type of curve.
Yeah, and then I think there's another one coming next month. And again, my comments are always the same, that the city will not take the responsibility of saying, yes, you're correct or whatever, when in fact they may or may not be, because that liability falls on the builder and the developer of the lots. And it's unfortunate that it happens so often. So you would be surprised to know how many we actually catch. There's a lot of them that you're like, oh, it's in the wrong place, whatever. So that they do a really good job in the field. Clearly on 6 inches, you probably would never even notice on a curved street or whatever. So they do a really good job, but they will not, as a city, we won't take the responsibility of being the measurer for them.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on behalf of this agenda item? No, close the floor. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve JZ 21 PUD with the minor amendment number 1.
I'll second it.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Harold Minden.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is JZ 21 SUP 111, request by Bell Land Use LLC for a minor amendment to SUP 111, establish new boundary lines, establish allowed uses, determine current facilities and uses, and eliminate approved conditions not in keeping with the general location of 528 East, 121st Street South.
Thank you. This is something I think most of you are familiar with. It's come before you on multiple occasions. It's an incredibly beautiful venue. It's an incredibly beautiful piece of property. I was approached earlier last year from the Immels wanting to build their final resting place. That's a funny story. I'll tell it off the record. It might have been a slight misunderstanding. But when we started talking to them and looking through the process, I know that the Planning Commission and Council had approved that there could be a single family residence. And I was talking off the record earlier before the meeting started that the state fire requirements, I know we use 2015 standards, but there are just a lot of changes that are taking place at the state level with what you can and can't do even on ag zone properties. And because of that, even with a single family home, there were some things that just made it so complicated to try to get access to the back of the lake in a safe way that the fire marshal felt comfortable. And then, of course, after I started looking into it, and this was clearly months ago, there were so many things that may or may not have continued to be used or done. So we just sat down, had a lot of conversations. We had 2 meetings in person, maybe 3, I can't remember. But anyway, so this is where we're at tonight. And I did request that they remove the single family homestead from the specific use permit. In reality, the specific use permit is for a lodge and for rental uses, etc. They were willing to do that, and then in doing that, that opened up the door for them to have a little different conversation with the fire marshal. So that's kind of how we got to this. So again, this is a minor amendment. I felt like this is something that just needed some cleanup work. It wasn't necessary to advertise to the adjacent neighbors. No use at this time is changing. They are going to continue to do whatever they can do within the rules of COVID. And just saying that, COVID has really just smashed the entertainment community and the event planning community, the restaurant, etc. So I believe that they will tell you they are not exactly sure what it will look like moving forward, but they have nailed down some plans for now. So again, there were no public comments. It is a minor amendment. The current use is a lodge facility for events. It is also an Airbnb. They have Airbnbs on the property as well as residential dwellings. There's no change in the zoning. It is still ag, and it will continue to be ag until if they chose to sell a portion off and redevelop it, it would then have to be advertised, rezoned, platted, etc. The comprehensive plan in the Horizon Jenks, it has it as parks and open space. On page 56, I just kind of gave you all the information about the parcels that are currently under this ownership and were part of the original SUP. On page 57, you see the new comprehensive plan. It's that lovely green area kind of in the middle of the map with the blue lake. Then a little bit. These documents look so much better on the computer. On page 58, if you have not been out there, I personally have not been, but it appears to be just absolutely stunning. And I wanted to make sure that you all, if you haven't been able to visit it, that you understand the great value that it is to our community. I know I have a daughter in the event planning business, and she has a very high regard for this facility. If you look on page 59, there are additional photos of the exterior and the interior. On page 60, you're going to see kind of a aerial view of the lodge and at least the location there. At the very bottom, this is the Yorktown project. So this was part of the SUP originally and when I came, I went ahead and had that removed because it was never officially removed from the SUP. On page 61, I had Mr. Bell is representing them as the consultant, and he provided all of this information. So the very top photo I circled in green where the barn is, and then the two properties in the yellow squares are Airbnbs currently, and the red one is a rental unit, and the blue one is, I believe, the current residence until their beautiful home is built. On page 62, it shows you the Yorktown area. The middle photo here on page 62 shows the Airbnb, and that is the cabin on the west and the south end of the lake. And then the last thing, which you can't hardly see in this photo, is the little, I kind of just put a little triangle there to show you that general area is where the home will be built. And they will be accessing their home through Yorktown. So there's a lot of moving pieces here on an incredible property. At this time, staff is recommending a minor amendment to SUP 111. This will eliminate approved conditions not in keeping with the vision, establish the new boundary lines, and at this time that has been done. They did not go through the lot split process, but they did a new deed and filed it with the county. So they took out the entire homestead and all the property on the east. Established the allowed uses. So basically what was in the SUP versus what is there. So I didn't try to create new uses. I just had the consultant work with the owners, identifying what's on the ground and how it's being used and functioning currently, and then just having those to be allowed. They're very similar in many ways, and we'll go through that in just a minute. Let's see. I would say that in my evaluation, this SUP minor amendment allows the homestead to be pulled from the designated overlay zoning boundary. And at any time, any portion of the homestead acreage, if it is sold or developed for a new use, the proposed development will follow all the city zoning code and subdivision regulations, and for commercial or residential uses or any combination. And I had already kind of stated that if they decide to carve out 50 acres or whatever, and a developer wants to come in and do it, he'll go through the entire process from start to finish. If any new uses are created after this date within the specific use 111 or any changes of use, the property will go through a new zoning process. I said a major amendment, but probably it would just be a new SUP if it really needs to start over. Next. At time of new development, full development guidelines will be followed, including but not limited to plating, rezoning, engineering, and public safety, etc. So at the bottom of page 9 of this particular staff report, and it's page 63 of 85, it talks about the permitted uses. So one of the permitted uses from the beginning was a cultural or heritage center, public or private attractions. And I just bulleted, it was always allowed to be a lodge. It still is a lodge, and it at this time can continue to be a lodge. Future uses will be determined following COVID. It was permitted originally as part of SUP, a bed and breakfast, overnight sleeping, and dormitory uses. At that time, there was no such thing as an Airbnb. We did not have those. So in the sense that short-term rentals, vacation home rentals, overnight bed and breakfast, they're still very similar uses. I personally did not have any heartburn on allowing those to continue, as it was, in my opinion, very similar. So there are currently 4 short-term rental structures, or you can call them vacation homes. There's 2 near the entrance, 1 near the lodge, and there's 1 on the southwest side of the lake, and that's what I was calling the cabin structure. So there's also permitted office uses and a permitted single-family residence use. So when you start looking at the evaluation, Mr. and Mrs. Immel are not currently in a position to finalize the site uses due to the COVID-19. And we agree that's okay, that's where the world's at right now. We want to work with them and help them get into compliance. So what you see below, number 1, eliminate approved conditions not in keeping with this vision. And this is a correction of original SUP 111. So originally, activities are subject to city council approved site plan. And I just made the note that any change of uses, so if they decide to have a pawn shop, we'll just, they decide to do that, that will trigger the whole process and we'll start over from scratch. Activities shall comply with ordinance 897. And it says that classifying certain cultural heritage, commercial resort facilities, etc. So basically what you see in the circled bullet point is what was allowed, and then I kind of just made a comment beyond that. So the square is my comment, no change of use or new buildings are allowed without going through the full development process. Activities shall comply with noise, that does not change. Overnight sleeping and dormitory uses shall be conducted only during the hours of 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. Sunday through Thursday. The operator owner must meet with the city manager annually for review. To my knowledge, I believe this was established during one of our meetings. That has never happened. It's very burdensome to them. It's very burdensome to the city, and that will be stricken from the requirements moving forward. The present status and future use of the 24.75 foot right-of-way along the eastern boundary. That is something that we'll keep in mind moving forward. It's a little bit tricky because the subdivision to the east built into the right-of-way, so it's no longer a straight line. I don't know what will happen with that. But we'll keep that there as a comment so that we're always thoughtful of that moving forward. Right-of-way and utility easements necessary for construction, extension, or connection of public improvements to serve the subject property or adjacent properties shall be provided, and that would not change. Number 2, establish new boundary lines. This has been done, and the exhibits, you can see those as we move forward and track B1 and B2. So then when you talk about established uses, we still have a lodge, no change requested, and offices are allowed, no change requested. Single family residence, they're still allowed to have 2, no changes requested. Bed and breakfast overnight sleeping has been changed to allow, I call them vacation rental homes, and I put in parentheses Airbnb. So what they would have used, that can be changed. Staff recommends approval of the requested SUP 111, minor amendment number 1. I know that their daughter is very interested in building her own home, and it's my understanding that the cabin at the south end of the property will very soon be lot split and be pulled out of the SUP, and then she will take a portion of number of acres north of that. So between the lodge and the cabin, she will build her homestead. Those two will come be connected through Wakefield, and they'll have to meet all the engineering and design criteria for that at that time. It could come as early as next month, I don't know. So we have another amendment right off the bat. And then the rest of it is basically just information kind of showing that I wanted you to see the reports and the information as we kind of went through this process and the discussion that we had at that time. So you can see Chief Ostrom has some very detailed requirements. And then I have on page 71 a historical summary. I would not consider it complete, but it was as good as I could get on the entire huge file. On page 73, you can see the new boundary line. So the lodge is essentially here. The two properties that will be lot split out soon are right here. And then this is considered the homestead, and that was what was part of it also originally. That's now removed. The rest of it, information. On page 81 is the document that Mr. Bell provided that kind of identifies the different uses, and then I kind of just zoomed in on them and showed you what the circles and the squares. I think that is all I have to say about it.
Okay. Questions or comments from the commissioners?
Wow, Marcia, you did an amazing job.
Yeah, that's very
So
nice.
basically, we have some wonderful people that have an awesome lodge that want to build their house.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And that's really what's prompted this, is to build. So I do have a couple of questions that kind of go back to some of this. We'll have to, maybe the applicant or representative for the applicant can answer. Going back to the SUP that was originally approved back in 1996, and then the related ordinances that went along with it. Because this site has two impacts on the city. Number one, a historic location. And then number two, on the new development plan, as you noted, it's designated as green space around the water feature. It appeared in a read through this that the area to be removed from the SUP would encompass we call it a lake, I guess, and then the land to the east side of that. So it appears like all of that would be coming out of the SUP, which basically, if we're looking at the value of the SUP towards its designed use as far as a cultural center, heritage center, and under our new development plan for green space, if that's out, then that opens that all up then for potential residential development that could close off that water feature for any public use or future development. So it has an impact. What we do on this has an impact on the remaining SUP. If we pull it out, because the overall size of the lot or the land with the SUP is significantly diminished with the removal of that. I don't know if everybody follows me on that.
Yes.
So that is a concern. So I'd be curious to know if the applicants, if they actually owned the land previously before the SUP was approved. Because again, you have the right to develop your own land as long as it's within the confines of the city limits and the development law. So just a couple quick questions on that. And I did have concerns, as we all were kind of casually talking about the stub out from Yorktown for access on anything that's done there. So yeah, they got to have access to city facilities, and then how's the fire department going to get in there if there's a fire? So I'm not sure I've phrased all of that in the form of a question, but if we could get some of those questions answered. Do we still have Kerry online with us?
Yes.
Can we call him Jarvis tonight, since he's doing all this remotely? I'd be kind of curious, again, with a satellite view of the property, because I'm a visual person.
I brought a presentation that has all that information.
Okay. Never mind, Jarvis.
This will last longer than 10 minutes?
I'll
We only
make
have
sure
10
it
Gotta
does.
keep it in 10.
But you guys can never get on to me about talking too much. Again.
I would say to one of your comments that it is not really open to the public already. It is a private
Private.
entity, and it is not, I would be trespassing. if
Don't
I
try to
went out
sneak in there and fish.
So that has already changed.
Yeah. But from that standpoint, though, with the SUP, there was a commercial civic intended use for that.
Get you a minute? Yeah, be quiet. Still.
I can describe what this site is.
But do
I'll
we
give
really
you
need to
the-
describe what it is? I mean, these people own this property, it's theirs, they want to build a home on it. I mean, I don't understand why we need all this information. I don't know, it's just me. I mean, this seems cut and dry, as easy as it gets. These people own this property, it's theirs, it's a private piece of property. They actually run a commercial deal out there. If they want to sell it off and build a neighborhood, Marseille already says it all has to come back and start over from the beginning, correct? So I don't know where we're getting at, but it seems like it's very cut and dry.
Thank you. Anyone else?
But it's really an amendment to the SUP in a minor way, so that's really the only difference. You're absolutely right. If you have property, you can develop it, it's just sort of changing in this minor way, so.
Okay, is it a minor amendment though, if we're removing 2/3 of the total area of the SUP from the SUP?
I chose to go, and you can, the code allows you to override me and go through a public hearing process where you notify the neighbors. I feel like it's a private property. They're not doing anything at this time to notify the neighbors of. That pond is not changing, the boundary's not changing, there's no new accesses being created along 121st. It's a very private land transaction amongst themselves. And I did not see that I didn't feel like that warranted notifying all the neighbors of anything, to have an open public discussion about private land, and they don't even know if they can operate a lodge in the next 1 to 5 years. And because of that, I felt like it was unjust to make it a public conversation.
I can see.
So it was me. I 100% said it'll be minor.
Yeah, it's a little misleading in the comprehensive plan to have it as, what was it, parks and open space, but which it sort of is, but yes, it's privately owned, so it's not
Right.
really a park.
And it still is open space. I mean, that none of that is changing. It's still open space. They're literally putting a house at the end. So, and that was always the plan too. They were always doing that.
I concede on the discussion.
Do you wish to have the applicant's representative respond to your initial question?
No, I concede.
Okay.
And just, again, it was just kind of a general thought,
Yeah,
because again, the SUP was designating the entire
It was.
area. And if you do carve that out, it does have an impact on what's left in the remaining SUP from a future development standpoint.
it does.
You take 2/3 away of the land use, then the viability of what's still there may no longer be viable.
And they can always come back and make a bigger SUP.
Yeah.
Because they have tons of new money and they want to do amazing, great new things. And I'll be here. Process the application.
Any other-
As far as this event center area, it's on the northern end of northwest part of the lake. And, what happens on the southern end, it's really far out there. I feel like, I don't think we're detracting from that. I mean, again, it's a private business. I just see it not really being a problem if there's a house built at the park.
It's a great use facility. Any other comments? Okay, we are all in agreement. Looks like we're all in agreement. We'll open it to the floor. If the applicant's rep would like to come forward, I don't know why, because we're all seeming to know what we're doing. At this point,
You got a green light right now.
wait a minute, I am not done speaking.
The session needs to take place.
I know.
Excuse me, I am still speaking.
Okay, sorry.
At this point in time, I do not believe that we need to see any kind of a presentation, since we all seem to be in agreement. However, you are welcome to take a few moments and
10.
no more than 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll be
Name and
quick.
address, please.
My name is Robert Bell, 1011 West G Street in Jenks. And the issue, and this is the same argument that Marseille and I had for some time, and we agreed that we were both right, and we moved forward. There was 2 lots of record on this property. Them was purchased the original Sunrise amusement park area. They also purchased a second lot. So there's 2 properties there to start with. They went through a specific use permit back in 1996 to create the Five Oaks Lodge. So when that was created, that original design had the lodge on the southeast, or the south corner of the property, had 10 rental units along the eastern or along the western bank at that point, parking lot and all that stuff connected in. Over on the east side at that time, the original specific use permit said future residential subdivision. That's what the design was. And the idea that all that needed to be in the specific use permit, it didn't. And the problem is the way the city did business at that time, we were talking about this property, and they did an ordinance that incorporated the entire thing. Well, Five Oaks was never on the entire property. So what we did is by state statutes, we can create properties that are greater than 5 acres with public road frontage that meet the zoning code. So we altered the lines, as you see in that, at that point, where the east property is the SUP, and that's all we're doing, is we're resetting this to what should have been set in the beginning of 1996. So what we create then is the 150 or 60 acre property or 38 acre property for the Emeralds to build their house, and that's a parcel by itself at that point with a single family home, and it's an agricultural piece. The lodge facility in this specific use permit is restricted to the east side or the west side of the lake at that point. And we're telling you, we also are going to do a lot split to take off the back 10 acres to create 2 home sites there. One is the existing home site. The reason I didn't do that right now is because that's an Airbnb, and if I remove that from the specific use permit now, it's in violation in the meantime. So that's why I'm going to come back and change it again when we go through that split process at that point. And that's going to set up the site for the Emerald's daughter to build their house on the vacant deal. And that will all access to a cul-de-sac that comes off of the Wakefield development at that point. So we're really not changing anything. This is a reset of saying, and they had the approval to build 2 more cabins up north of the lodge. That was the original SUP 121 or 111 at that point. That's what that was designed to do. So, and that really wasn't adding any. That was taking 2 that was going to be on the western bank of the lake and move it up there. So the only thing that's changed over time is the lodge wasn't built on the south. Everything was built in this complex at the north west corner. So in related to the fire chief, when we do this change and then we do the lot split, there's the whole complex is in compliance with the fire code as far as roads and the fire hydrant. The existing cabin that's in the back is not in compliance with that fire code. But when we do the lot split later on this year, that when that gets to be a separate piece of property, it'll be in compliance. So the whole thing's in compliance. We'll be in compliance when we're done, and that's our goal. And the Emeralds get to build a house on their property in the back, and that's separated from the lodge, and that was the whole design. So if I got some neat pictures there, history of the lodge, the roller coaster, the stuff that was there before the Emeralds purchased it. So, but what we're trying to do is simplify this, and we're not changing anything on the ground, and we're really making it compliant with what the mistake was. Is when the original specific use permit was done, the ordinance was filed on the entire property, and it was never intended to be on the entire property.
Thank you.
And I'm done.
Thank you very much.
And I'm still in agreement, just kind of a clarification, point of reference for the rest of the commissioners. I'm going back to conversations we had in the early 90s prior to this SUP, actually back in the days of leadership. And at that time, we were trying to figure out who we were as a community. We didn't want to necessarily, at that time, we were the antique capital of America or Oklahoma, whatever it was. And the challenge that was being discussed with city leadership at that time was point of destination in Jenks. And there were I know that there were some original discussions identifying that particular area as possible development for point of destination because of the historic nature of the location, the fact that, the amusement park went out, could something else happen there? So that might have been some motivation as well to the SUP when it came through. So we have limited land space. We can't create any more land. We can't create any more water features. So if this all eventually fills in with residential, where all of that is closed off, the idea that then becomes community green spaces, there's no way of backing that back up.
But we have no, sorry to interrupt you, we have no bearing on that, it's their property.
It is their property,
So I
absolutely.
mean, if they want to sell it off, it doesn't matter, there's nothing we can do about that.
Absolutely agree, but whatever happens there development-wise has to conform to the city code, if it's within city limits. So I just wanted to give you a point of reference of why I raised the question. If you close that door, there's no way of reopening it.
Thank you for your motion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the 21 SUP 111 with a minor amendment number 1 for 5 Oak Lodge.
I'll second it.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph.
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West.
Yes.
Yes. All right, any other business, any planning updates for us?
We got chapters 1 through 5 on the UDO. Have you had a chance to look at them?
No. I started, I haven't finished.
Yes. We'll get, I'll find out next week when we're gonna have a planning commission update on it. So we wanted to do the first round. I've spent probably 8 to 10 hours looking at it, having staff meetings over it, discussing it. And I feel like it's a lot. It's a whole lot. So I want to get that out to you all as quickly as possible. You probably have 9 items on your agenda next month. So I don't know if you plan to be gone for spring break, but
Spring break that early?
no. But it'll be nice if you're all here because there's a lot. There are 2 PUDs, a couple of minor amendments, Platte for Tory Lakes. I can't remember what else, but there should be lots of exciting things on your agenda for next month. I think that's about it.
Will it be virtual again by then?
Yeah.
I know the council's waiting.
Grass
to
isn't even growing, Scott.
I don't know. Brandon's not here to give us our update, so.
I understand council's waiting to have a meeting
Yeah.
until they go virtual because they don't really like having public meetings.
I think it is on the state agenda for discussion soon. I don't know what the answer to that is. There was something I was gonna say though. Oh, we should have another planning commissioner. Someone should be nominated by the mayor at the next city council meeting. And assuming that they get approved, then we'll have an announcement for the next planning commissioner.
On the virtual meetings, there's like 3 bills going through the state, and you probably read about them. It kind of looks like we might get, they'll go through like a couple of weeks even, but who knows?
So Jenks currently has no mask mandate, correct?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
I can confirm, it expired Sunday night at midnight.
Yeah, that's correct.
It was a pretty interesting news segment.
I've got one.
I missed it, where'd you see it?
Oh, yeah.
LA.
Oh,
I've got one.
I asked Kyle Solomon if he was gonna report it, but he said no.
He did.
Oh, did he finally? Okay.
He reported on the Facebook he's got.
That it was no longer,
Said it expires at midnight. He actually said Monday at midnight, but it's.
Monday morning at 12:01.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, good.
Just one quick item. I've decided, or maybe made a mistake, to run for city council. So There's 3 people running and we'll see how it goes.
Or
And I'm happy to stay the at-large. seat,
at large,
so-
okay.
And if it doesn't work out, I'm happy to stay with you guys, so.
Okay.
So should we vote?
I'm not sure whether we want to.
Whatever you want to do.
I like having him here.
I do too. I don't know he's running.
You might not have should have said anything.
Interesting.
No, I'm excited about the possibility, but I like being here too, and, you know.
That would be the mayor's seat.
Yeah, really.
That's the mayor's seat.
Yeah.
Not seeking to be mayor, unlike, I saw someone else was saying,
Neither
I'm
was
running
Bob-
for mayor.
neither
I'm
was
not
Bobby.
running for mayor.
Bobby didn't want to be mayor either. Nobody up there wants it.
Well,
Well, one of them wants it, but
we already filed?
he's not
I
getting
have, yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah, next year, all
Probably,
three.
well, can we dismiss this meeting though?
Oh, yeah.
Have
All right,
more
let's go.
conversation.
Motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.